All right, hi everybody, John Meadows here, and today I want to talk about how you can get a lot leaner, maybe even get ripped during quarantine. So let's start off with the basics. So the first thing you have to understand is where you're at calorically. How many calories do you eat during a day? Because there are some changes that we can make that are going to help you get ripped, but if you don't know where your calories are at, it makes this really difficult. So the first thing we have to do, number one, is we have to determine roughly how many calories you're eating a day. Calories do matter. If you have 1,500 calories one day, the next day you have 2,700, next day you have 3,200, next day you have 1,700, it becomes very challenging to say, okay, how many calories can we reduce? So calories do matter. So how do we do that? Most of us actually don't really track our calories. We're not really sure. But I'm sorry to tell you, you have to do some tracking in order to get a baseline. Ideally, what you want to know is you want to know roughly how many calories are you at to stay kind of normal. So not gaining weight, not losing weight, just to be maintaining. You need to know how many calories it takes for you to maintain. So the first thing I would do is really simple. Is I would document how much you're eating. Now, this doesn't need to be some crazy, crazy difficult process. You can simply just write down meal one, here's the food, and just how much calories was in it. You don't even really need to track your protein, carbs, or fats. You could just put the total calories in for the meal, or you can get a little bit deeper. But normally you're going to have to do that for probably 7 to 10 days. But let's say you start tracking it and you eat the same thing every day because you're going to have to be consistent. You're going to have to eat the same thing. Let's say you start losing weight. Well, then you need to bring your calories up so that you're maintaining. Or let's say you're gaining weight. Now you're going to have to lower your calories. So you see, you're going to have to make some adjustments. And then once you hit the calories that are maintaining your body weight, that's your maintenance calories. Now, how much should you be eating, or how much are you really burning? There are ways to kind of figure that out. One of them is with a metabolic cart. You can look that up if you want, but most of you probably aren't going to have access to a metabolic cart to give you an exact amount of an idea of how many calories you're expending. So you're going to have to do this tracking. Now, you can do it with a pen and paper, or there's online calculators that allow you to do this. Whatever is easiest for you. Me personally, I always kind of had fun writing it down. That I'd put it in a spreadsheet. You don't need to do that, but that's what I would do. So anyways, so step one is establish how many calories are we really at in terms of just maintaining where you're at. Now here's where it gets real tricky. How many calories should you be at? And I have like some little formulas here that I'm going to share with you to give you an idea of how I kind of go about this. Here's a reason why that's important. Let's say your calories are already really low. Let's say you're a 200-pound guy and you're only eating 2,000 calories. That's pretty low. It's going to be very difficult for you it's going to be harder for you because you have less wiggle room than let's say if you were maintaining on 3,200 calories. Now you've got more wiggle room. You can cut calories more. So I like to have an idea of kind of where you're at. Now let me give you an idea of what I think is low, medium, and high. So I have a formula I use. So I take total. I take your body weight and I multiply it by number to get total calories. Okay, so let's say you weigh 200 pounds. I have a couple different numbers here. If you multiply that by 16, that gives you 3,200 calories. My experience is that's a pretty healthy metabolism. I've seen people certainly eat more than that, 3,400, 3,700. But that's a pretty healthy metabolism. Then I have this medium number. And you can see this on the chart that's showing right now during the video. 200 times 13, that's kind of in the medium ballpark. That's 2,600 calories. So that's not too bad. And then you have lower numbers. There's like a times 10 multiplier that I use. So if you're 200 pounds and you are only eating 2,000 calories, that would be times 10. Now you don't have much wiggle room. So if you're at 10, you don't have much wiggle room. If you're 13, not too bad. If you're 16, you're in pretty good shape. So, and let's equate that for a female. Let's say the female is 125 pounds. So if she goes through this process, she figures out what her maintenance calories are. Let's say it's around 1,250. That's times 10. So that's pretty low. You don't have a lot of wiggle room. Let's say we use the multiplier times 13, which would give her 1,625 calories. Hey, not bad. What about times 16, which is 2,000 calories, which is actually where a lot of my women are at. They're around 2,000 calories that I work with if they weigh around 125, 130 pounds. Now you've got a lot of wiggle room to work with. So that 10, 13, and 16, like where you fall, that's important to know because it's going to impact a few things. It's going to impact how many changes you can make, how aggressive you can get. But first of all, now we need to figure that number out. So that's step number 2. It's so you see where your total calories are at, and then you make a determination if you're kind of in the low, medium, or high. If you're in the high, you're ready to go. If you're in the medium, I'd like to get you bumped up a little bit, but you still might be okay. And if you're in the low, it's going to be tough, so we probably got to bump your calories up. Now, here's the challenge. If we bump the calories up and you gain some weight, then you might think to yourself, well, now I'm gaining weight, I'm making it harder to lose. Yes, that's potentially true. But sometimes you got to take one step back to take 2 forward. Now, I want to talk about something else. So if you look at the amount of calories you expend, and this is just basic stuff here, think about a pie like we have in the picture. There's basically 4 components that make up how many calories you expend. One of them is your basal metabolic rate. That's just the term that everybody in the industry uses is to keep the lights on. That's just to keep you functioning. That's a huge, huge percent of your caloric expenditure, 65, 70%. Another one is the actual food that you're eating. It's called the thermic effect of food. Much smaller number, probably to 5 to 10% of what you're eating determines how many calories you're expending. Now, we know that eating protein, it has a little higher thermic effect. So we're probably burning a little bit more calories, but it's a pretty small number. It's not a big deal. Now, the other number, which is pretty significant, 20%, is made up in this case of the other 2 things. So you have basically exercise, energy expenditure just basically through exercise, doing your cardio or working out. And then you have NEAT. I've mentioned that on a lot of my videos before. That's non-exercise activity thermogenesis. So that's just what you're doing. Like right now, I'm moving, I'm fidgeting, I'm burning calories. If I wasn't doing this, let's say I was just sleeping, taking a nap, or sitting on the couch watching Netflix. Maybe watching Ozark, which is what I've been binge watching. That is a pretty significant number, 20%. And I will also tell you that the NEAT is probably a higher percentage of that 20% than the actual exercise that you're doing, unless you just do tons and tons and tons of exercise. Okay, so those are the 4 components. BMR, the thermic effect of food, which is a very small part, your actual exercise, and then your non-exercise stuff, just walking around. Now, generally speaking, when you eat more, your metabolic rate raises, and when you eat less, your metabolism adjusts downward. So if you're in that spot, that times 10 number, or God forbid you're even worse than that, then what I suggest you do is you take 2 weeks and you actually eat more. I would say eat another, say, 10%, maybe even 15% of your calories. So start there. So if you're that guy that's only eating 2,000 calories, you weigh 200 pounds, add another 10% to maybe even actually 20%, another 200 to 400 calories. It's not a massive number, but it's enough to at least build your metabolism up. You've got to do that for a couple of weeks. Now, I sometimes, when I'm coaching people to compete, sometimes I take this and I get real aggressive. Like I'll take people up for 2 weeks to the point where they're really full all the time. That's not a good idea all the time, but just for a 2-week period, you can hack it. And what happens with those people is I'll overfeed them. The first week, they're miserable. And then the second week, their metabolism adjusts, they're burning through it, and they're like, wow, now I'm actually getting more hungry. So you see a nice little uptick. And they've got more food, so now you have more to work with. If you're already in that times 16 or more range, you're good to go. If you're in the times 13 range, you could still do 2 weeks of overeating, okay? That little 2-week thing I always thought was really cool for people that needed to eat more. The only problem is psychologically, you just got to be tough. You got to realize you may gain some weight because, again, you're eating over what your maintenance is. That's okay. We're taking one step back to take 2 forward, okay? So that is the total calories. And trying to give you an idea of whether you're ready to diet and get shredded or whether you need to take that 2-week step where you eat more. So you're either going to have to eat more or you're going to be ready. So let's assume now that you've ate more for 2 weeks, you've increased your calories by 10 to 20%, and now you're ready to go, okay? So now part 2, we're going to talk about your macros and how you're actually going to change your diet and your exercise patterns to get ripped.
Hello everybody, my name is Alexander Meadows, and today I'm going to be doing triple or nothing.
All right, part 2. So now we've got the total calories. You're ready to start your diet. We're going to use, for the male, we're going to use the 200 times 16. So we're going to say he's at 3,200 calories. And for the female, we're going to use 125 times 16. So she's at 2,000 calories. So now let's talk about the macros. So I like to keep it very simple. For the male, for both of them, we're going to use times 1 for their body weight for their protein. So the male is 200 pounds times 1. He's going to have 200 grams of protein. All right. For fat, I'm going to use 0.4. So that's going to mean 80 grams of fat. So if you look at the protein, 200 grams of protein, there's 4 calories per gram in protein. So that's going to give you 800 calories worth of protein. For the fat, you're going to have, again, times 4. 200 times 4 is 80 times 9 calories per gram is going to give you 720 total calories. So if you add the protein calories and the fat calories, that's going to give you 1,520 calories, okay? Now, if you remember, the total calories we said, his body weight times 16 is 3,200. So now if you take 3,200 and you subtract 1,520, we've got to make up the carb difference. It's going to be 1,680 calories of carbs we need. We know that there's 4 calories per gram in carbs. So 1,680 divided by 4 is 420 grams of carbs. So let's do that with the female. 125 pounds, that's 125 grams of protein, times 0.4 is 50 grams of fat. So if you add the calories from the protein and the fat there, you get 500 grams or 500 calories of protein, and you get 450 calories of fat. So 950 calories total. And if you remember, she was 125 times 16. We got her metabolism going really well. So 2,000 calories minus 950 calories. It's going to leave her with 1,050 calories that she's going to have to make up with carbohydrates. So you divide that by 4 and you get 262 grams of carbs. So those are going to be the starting point macros that I want you to be at. Now, let's talk about the actual action plan. Now, what do you do? So now that you're in a healthy space, you're ready to go, you're ready to get ripped, what I want you to do is I want you to work in a 10% increment to start. So I want you to use 10% as your factor. A 10% reduction, or it's a combination of a reduction and an increase. Now, you could do a 10% reduction in calories. So let's take the male, for example. His total calories was 3,200 calories. So if you took 10% of that, you could just subtract 320 calories. That's one option. Option number 2 would be to just increase the calories expended. So they could just do whatever they're doing now, they could add enough cardio, exercise, or whatever it is to burn another 320 calories. That's another option. And I'll give you option 3. That's do a combination of the two. So we could do 5% via diet change, reduction in calories, and we could do 5% of that via increasing your energy expenditure. So if you did that, you took that, the 5% of their calorie intake is 160 calories. And then you could also increase their energy expenditure by cardio or weight training for another 160 calories. So that's a 10% difference. 5% through reduced food and 5% through increased activity. Or like I said, you could have just done a 10% reduction in food or a 10% increase in calories, okay? Same thing with the female. So if she was at 2,000 calories and we decided to do the 10% reduction in calories, it would be 200 calories she's going to wipe out of her diet. Or she could do a 200 calorie increase in energy expenditure, or she could do a combination of both. Decrease her calories by 100 and then increase her activity to burn 100 more calories. So 10% reductions is where I want you to work, okay? Now you put this reduction into play and it's going to work because calories in and calories out does work. 10% reduction, let it ride. And let it ride for, normally I like to say 7 days, but here's where things can vary. Metabolisms vary in how much they adjust. So some people's bodies will adapt really quickly to the new calories and they'll need another adjustment sooner. And then some people, and this is the hard thing about coaching diets, well, just in general, this is the hardest thing. And some people, the adjustment will work for a while before their metabolism adjusts. And again, as you lower calories, your metabolism will eventually adjust to the lower calories and it'll slow down. So how long you ride that 10% change is going to depend on your results. So let's say you get stuck. You're done, you've maxed out your progress. Then I want you to do another 10%. And you get where I'm going here? It's going to continue. And then eventually, you're going to get to a spot where your calories are really, really, really low. And you remember at the beginning of the video, and I said that times 10 was kind of the danger zone. That's pretty low. Well, when you get down to like times 8, so like for the 200-pound guy, times 8 is only 1,600 calories. You are flat square in a danger zone. So if you get down below 10, into 8 or 9 times your body weight in calories, now you really can't go any lower. You can go lower, but you're going to start losing muscle. You're going to be so tired. You're neat. You're non-exercise. So when you're just walking around, you're going to be taking more naps, so you won't burn as many calories. It's going to get real challenging. So what I would propose that you do in that case is when you get down that low, I want you to stay really low for 6 days. And on the 7th day, I want you to eat extra. So you're going to refeed, you're going to add, you're going to take your calories back up to where you started your diet. So if you start at 3,200 calories and by this point you're down all the way down to 1,800, take them back up to 3,200, get a big meal in, you'll burn through it so fast, it'll be gone by Tuesday of the next week. So 10% change, you keep on doing that until that multiplier, that your body weight times that number, when it goes below 10, you're in the danger zone. When it hits 8 or 9, now it's time for you to just stay there. Don't go any lower, but just start adding the refeeds in. So this process is what I would use. It's very close to what I would use with people who are competing, or even if you're not competing, someone who maybe just want to get ready for a photo shoot or whatever, they want to get really lean. But this is a step-by-step methodical process that you can follow. I want to give you a couple more keys too. When you change the calories, I really prefer that you just change them in carbohydrates. I like to keep your protein up. It helps burn more calories. It protects your muscle. And I like to keep the fat up. The fat protects you hormonally. Really low fat diets can have really bad impacts on your hormone levels. So I want you to basically do the changes in your carbohydrates. I would also like for you to take, when you're removing carbohydrates, to wait until the last possible changes to take anything out around when you train. So I would rather you keep your pre, post-workout, intra-workout carbs in as long as you can. Remove your carbs from the other meals first. The other thing I want you to do is we always talk about sleep. Make sure you're getting 7-8 hours of good sleep at night. If you need a 20 or 30 minute nap during the day, that's fine too. Just keep it early in the day, not late in the afternoon. Try to manage stress as well. Stress can drive your cortisol levels up. Stress hormones, muscle protein breakdown. You can eat up your muscle. And everything I would say is maintain your NEAT. I've mentioned that a couple times, but as you bring your calories down, it's going to get real tempting to just sit around and not do anything, but make sure you stay active, because NEAT is, again, remember that was, maybe 12 to 15%, maybe even higher than that in your total energy expenditure. That's very significant. So if you drop that way back, now you're not burning as many calories as you thought. So you're making it very difficult on yourself. So anyways, I hope this helps. If you follow this process, I think it's a bulletproof process, unless you have all kinds of wacky hormonal issues. This is a pretty solid process. I think if you follow this, you'll be happy. So that's it for this video. Hope you enjoyed it. Hang in there under quarantine. We're hearing some positive news now. Some states are thinking about reopening. And so hang in there. We'll be out of this thing before you know it. So thanks, and we'll see you next time.